Okay, hi again, everyone. It's Emma here at Function Point. I've got Mark Wilson on the line with me, and today we're going to be doing a session all about invoicing in your Function Point system, which we've happily called Show Me the Money. So I'm just going to show a few slides here, and then we're going to hand things over to Mark. So today, your presenters are Mark Wilson and myself. I'll be co-piloting. Mark will be taking us through everything to do with invoicing. And some of the things we're going to be reviewing, such as how to save time on making invoices and using batch invoicing, learning to create custom invoice printouts, how to easily pull out profit and loss statements and other financial reports, and keeping track of your accounts receivables. Now, Mark, I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter now so that you can start sharing your screen with us. And everyone, know that we're going to go for about a half hour to 45 today. Questions are welcome throughout. I'll be answering those as we go, typing answers in. And then Mark, I'm sure, will be checking in with us to see if there's any good questions to answer while he's presenting. So, Mark, I'm just fighting to make you presenter. Here we go. There we
Awesome.
are.
Thanks so
Oh,
much, Em. And just to confirm, are you able to see the function point system up there? Do I have the correct screen showing?
I am now. Yeah, I see your FP demo, and it looks like you've got the utilization summary showing there.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much. And thanks for the picture, by the way. I was complaining to Emma earlier how I wasn't a huge fan of the picture that we were putting up for the webinar, so she seems to have gone with something
I
a bit better. So
improvised. I
thanks,
improvised.
thanks for that. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining in today. Of course, today's webinar is called Show Me the Money, and it's all about invoicing. So we're going to be going through some invoicing processes. And one thing I want to do before we jump in, and I am going to move into this pretty quickly, is I want to show the handout that's going to be sent to everyone after the webinar today. And it's going to outline a bit of the process that we're going to be following. This document is called Easy Invoicing with FP, and it gives a bit of a workflow process for invoicing in the system. And this kind of follows a bit of the process that the webinar is going to be going through today. We're going to be reviewing what needs to be invoiced, planning how we intend to invoice it, creating the actual invoices, reviewing them through reporting, and then following up with payment information, and then also taking a look at some accounts receivable data in the system. Now, one thing I want to draw attention to here is the little boxes kind of in the middle, and there's 4 of them. And one of the challenges we've had in planning this webinar is finding a way to demonstrate the different ways of invoicing in Function Point, because there are many different ways, and there are many different ways in order to accommodate the different types of ways that agencies bill. And we found that there are a lot of different ways. It's really hard to kind of categorize them, but we have put together what we feel are the 4 main types of ways that agencies are invoicing, and we've given them labels. And these labels may not be exactly what you'd like to call them, and I'll touch on that in just a bit. But the labels that we've been using are actual billing. In other words, we're going to be invoicing for the time and expenses within a certain time frame. And that's more of kind of a traditional old school agency way that a lot of people still use, just billing for time and expenses, time and materials. Another is retainer, and this is very common where we're billing a specific amount every single month for a certain amount of services that we're going to be providing on a monthly basis. And it could be quarterly or yearly retainer, but most often it's a month-to-month retainer that maybe has a contract, say, for a year or something like that. The next is project-based, and project-based is an umbrella for a lot of different types of invoicing, but it's basically when you have a fixed fee, a set dollar amount that you intend to charge the client for the services you're providing. And the way that you bill that is, there's a variety of different ways. You may be billing 100% up front, if only we could be so lucky, right? You may be billing, maybe a third up front, a third at a milestone, and a third upon completion. But the concept is it's a flat fee, and you're going to bill that flat fee regardless of how much time you actually put into it. Whether you go significantly over or under, it's a project-based flat fee that we're going to be billing. And then pre-bill, a deposit, where we're doing a deposit that's going into unearned revenue for work that we haven't actually done yet. Now, the processes that we're going to be going through today are going to cover the first 3, actual billing, retainer, and project-based. Actually, in a different order. We're going to be going through project-based, then actual billing, and then retainer. And we're going to be going through the process for each one. And I just want everybody to keep in mind that If it's not applicable to yourselves, I still recommend paying attention to the process. If your agency doesn't do any actual billing, if you're never billing for just time and expenses, and you're always doing retainer or project-based, don't minimize the window. I recommend taking a look at it, because even if it's not how you operate, it's still really going to assist you in understanding how the program works, and a bit of a workflow process, and just how the system is connected to the different modules. So, I'd recommend paying attention to all three. Without further ado, let's jump in. Now, the first thing that I'm going to be showing is a process for creating a single invoice for a project-based job in the system, that fixed fee billing type that I was talking about. And before I jump right into that process, there's two things that I need to touch on really quickly. And there's two values in the system that we're going to be using and looking at today. And they may be values that you may not use in your system. And what I'm talking about right now, and you'll notice I'm going to a job find screen to show them, is a drop-down in the system called work type and a status called ready to bill. Now, the status is not as important, even though I'm going to be using it. What is important is the work type. Now, you may not actually see the work type field in your system, and the reason is it may not be activated. So the first thing I want to do is show you that if you don't find a field in your system called work type, then you'd want to go up into the admin section under System Setup, System Preferences. You're going to find an area that we call Track, and you're going to find the option to add the work type field. Now, that work type is what I'm going to be using to label the jobs as to how we intend to bill for them. And if we then go into list maintenance, you'll notice admin, system setup, list maintenance, we're going to find at the very bottom our work type. And here are the four different types that I mentioned: actual billing, retainer, project-based, and pre-bill. So I just want to mention that's going to be an important field, and we're going to be using that quite a bit through the webinar today. But the first thing I want to do is I'm going to pull up a report, and there's going to be two views that we're going to look at. I'm going to pull up first a work in progress report, really standard work in progress report. I'm going to go into the report section, select work in progress. I'm going to choose estimated versus actual versus invoice. Now, you'll notice there's an end date, and the end date allows you to pull a report for work in progress, say up to month end, maybe January 31st, if you want to look at work in progress up until maybe the end of last month. In this case, I'm going to show me everything. Now, what this is doing is it's pulling up a list of every job that's active or considered active in the system. It's then showing you the job, the actual values, being the value of external expenses and internal, time, and any kind of internal expenses. We can then see how much was estimated for external and internal in a total, the variance between your estimated and your actual, how much we've invoiced, unbilled, and an aging, the days open. So what this allows us to do is open up a list of jobs and see for every job, what's the value of the work that we put in, what's the value of the estimated, how do those compare, how much have we invoiced, what is the work in progress being a comparison between how much we've invoiced and the value of the work that we've done, and how long has this job been open for. Now, a process that you might have is, how are we going to let our bookkeeper know, or the accountant, or whoever it is that is actually going in and creating the invoices, as to which jobs now need to be invoiced. And I'm talking about a project-based invoicing here. If it's time and materials, you're probably going to be doing it at the end of every month. If it's retainer, you're going to be doing it at the end of every month. But in this case, it's project-based, and it might be, say, the account executive or project manager who needs to communicate the fact that a job is now ready to bill. Perhaps it's reached a milestone. Perhaps it's had a certain percentage of budget. Or maybe you just had a phone call with the client, and they said, you know what, we're happy, bill us the next 50%. Now, one way, of course, is to produce this work in progress report and to literally pull out print this off, pull out a pen, and highlight the ones that need to be billed and send that to the bookkeeper. There's nothing wrong with that, and you can do that with another report as well. But this work in progress, again, will show you the work in progress and the days open. However, another option is a project manager might actually go in and use more of the system functionality to show which jobs are ready to be billed, and they might use a status for that. So a project manager might do a job find, and they might Or it could be account executive, it could really be anybody, whoever is deciding that these jobs are ready to bill. And they might base this, as who is the account executive on the job, or who is a job contact. Oftentimes, if a project manager is managing a job or project in the system, they themselves are going to be a contact on that job. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull up a list of jobs based on a work type. And that work type is going to be project-based. I'm then going to choose a status, and I'm going to say, show me everything that's ready to bill. I'm going to make this list editable, click Find. And this is a good example of a project manager view where they might be coming in here, or could be an account executive, or really anybody who needs to decide when the project needs to be, or the job needs to be invoiced. But I can then come in here and change the status to ready to bill. I might even put in a date description of what is the percentage that now needs to be invoiced. This job is ready to bill, and it's ready to bill another 25%. As the person who's actually creating that invoice, the person needs to go in and individually create the invoices for all the project-based jobs that are ready to be billed. What we might do is select work type, project-based. I'm going to deselect that editable list. I'm going to select ready to bill, click Find, and that produces the results of our search. Based on that search, ready to bill and project-based, I have 7 jobs that are ready to be invoiced. I can now see the estimated value, actual value, the value of time and expenses, variance, how much we've invoiced, and a value here between how much we've invoiced and the value of the work that's been done. Now, if we want to produce a report on this, up at the top we can choose to produce a wide variety of reports, but the PDF printout will give us a list and show us the status, ready to bill first 33%, ready to bill another 25%. I have one here called website landing page redesign that's ready to bill the first 50%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a single invoice for that job that's called website landing page redesign. Before I do, Emma, I just want to check in. Do we have any questions or anything that I can assist with at this time?
Hey, Mark. We don't have any questions yet, which is okay. Hope everyone feels encouraged to type their questions in. You should see a question section on the GoToWebinar control panel, so questions are welcome. But yeah, nothing is yet.
Okay, no problem. So let's go ahead and let's create that first project-based invoice. So we have a job that's called website landing page redesign. It has an estimated value of $11,000. We haven't put any work into it yet. We also haven't invoiced for anything yet. The project managers let me know that it's now ready to be invoiced for 50%. Maybe it's 50% up front in order to start work. I'm going to click on the name of the job, and that's going to bring me into the jobs details page. From the jobs details page, if I want, I can review a bit of a summary, what are our estimated and actual values and the profitability. This is a brand new job. I'm billing the first 50% of it, therefore there aren't any values. Maybe I want to review the financials tab as well, just to see kind of an overview of the job scope of work. But up at the top, I'm going to select Add Invoice. And the process for doing this is really simple. I know that it has a work type of project-based, where it's a fixed fee, and I've been told to bill 50% of the job up front. So all I need to do is enter a billing percentage of 50%, select Create. And that's literally my work done. The invoice is created, and I can now move on. Notice, however, it does bring us to our invoice details page, and it does show us the scope of work, the structure of the job, service group, and the individual line items, their estimated and actual values. Notice billing percentage, $1,000 estimated, 50% of that is $500. The total is $11,000 estimated, 50% is $5,500. If you need to make any changes, you can go ahead and make those. Otherwise, it's saved automatically. You don't need to hit save unless you do need to make any changes. And then up at the top, we can choose to produce our client-facing PDF. Now here is an example of a client-facing invoice. And this, of course, would have your own logo and structure to it. One thing I want to show really quickly is how to customize the client-facing invoice printout. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but just really quickly, if I do want to make an adjustment to what the client is seeing here, what I would do is I would go into the admin section under System Setup and Printing Preferences. It's then going to show me a list of all of my printouts, and I'm going to choose to add a printout. In this case, I'm going to call it simple invoice. And this invoice is going to be very simple. And this is going to be invoice type of invoice, or sorry, printout type of invoice. Hit save and next. And then basically, and I don't want to spend too much time on customizing the documents. It's pretty straightforward. It kind of takes you through the process. You just go through each area of the document and choose, what it is that you may or may not want to show. I'm going to go into the invoice details and choose really not to show that much. I don't want to show the services or the expenses. I just want to show the service groups. And perhaps I don't want to include any kind of reports as amended to this invoice. I just want a really, really simple invoice. If I now navigate back to my invoice details page, you'll notice I'm using the main navigation bar to do that. Hovering over view, selecting the most recent, brings me directly back. I can now produce a new client-facing version. And you'll notice that the level of detail here that we're showing is significantly reduced based on what I've done to customize that printout. We can then, of course, save that as a PDF and email it to the client. Just attach it to your email, no problem. However, if you want to, you can select to notify client. And that's going to allow you to send the client an email from the system that's going to have the printout attached to it, as long as the contact has an email address in the system. And you can add more contacts and CC them if you wish. You can also send a test version to yourself. So that's the process for creating that single project-based invoice. The next thing that we're going to be moving to is looking at the process of doing a batch invoice. And we're going to be doing a batch invoice for time and materials jobs, so that actual billing work type. The scenario here is it's the end of the month. We have a handful of jobs in the system that are have a work type of actual billing. In other words, bill all the time and expenses within a given time frame, in this case a month. So as the individual who's going in and creating the invoices, I now need to go and create an invoice for every single job that's open as a work type of actual billing that has unbilled time and expenses on it. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to do a job find. I'm going to use my work type again. I'm going to say, show me all of my actual billing jobs. Now, the status here really isn't all that relevant, because in most cases, when we're speaking with agencies and they're doing actual billing the time and expenses within a time frame, there really wouldn't be a ready-to-bill status. It's not really applicable. They're always ready to bill. You're going to be billing all the unbilled time and expenses for a given time frame. So what we might do in this case is just show me everything that's open. I just want all of the actual billing jobs that are open. I'm then going to click Find, and that produces the results of our search, which is 9 open active jobs that are an actual billing work type. And you'll notice that we can see the client, the name of the job, the due date. We can then see the estimated dollar value, actual dollar value, being the value of time and expenses, the variance between our estimated and our actual, how much we've invoiced, and a work in progress or a comparison between our previously invoiced amount and the value of the work that's been done. A lot of these jobs do not have any invoice values on them. However, some of them do. For example, this job, we estimated just under $15,000. We've put in just over $11,000 worth of work. We've already invoiced for just under $7,500, but it's less than the value of the work that we've done. So we still have an amount here that is going to be billed. Now, if you see jobs here with positive values, that's fine. If you see jobs where you haven't done any work that hasn't been billed yet, it's not a problem. You don't need to find a way to get them out of this list. You can still go ahead and do your batch invoice. If you see jobs where you've invoiced more than the value of the work already or equal to, don't worry about it. It's not going to generate an invoice for them. Invoices are only going to be created for jobs that have unbilled time and expenses. And the way that we do that is by selecting to create a batch invoice from the list. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this webinar batch. And then you'll notice it says calculate from. And what I want to choose here is remainder from actuals. Remainder from actuals is basically saying invoice all of the unbilled time and expenses. So remainder from actuals, very important when you're doing a batch invoice for those type of time and materials billing jobs. I'm going to select create. And that has now brought me to my invoice batch add. It's showing me the details up at the top, like the name and description and so forth. And then down below, it's now showing me all the jobs that were in our list. And all we need to do now is choose which of these do we want to create an invoice for. And we can do that one by one by clicking these plus icons, or we can go ahead and just select Add All. Selecting Add All is generating an invoice for every single job that we have listed here. Now you'll notice that we have estimated, actual, variance, and invoiced with the asterisk. This is letting us know this is the amount that we are invoicing right now. You know, in total, we just generated $44,876.25 worth of invoices. We then hit Submit and Next. And now that has brought us to the invoice details page for the first invoice in that list. Notice the breadcrumb. Burrard Street Golf is my client. Burrard Identity is my project. Logo Development and Letterhead is my job. Webinar Batch is the invoice batch, but right now we are looking at invoice 77. Notice below in the relating tabs, there's a tab that's called Batch. This is going to show you a list of every single invoice that is included in this batch. There's a few different options that you have now. We've generated a bunch of different invoices, and we've generated them for different clients. What they're going to show you in just a minute is if you can produce a batch invoice for multiple jobs for one client and send it all to them as one invoice, not a problem. In this case, we have multiple clients, multiple jobs, we've done a batch, but we've generated multiple invoices. Your options now are option A, go through the invoices one by one. Select the invoice number. It brings us to that specific invoice, in this case 69. We can then choose to produce our PDF. So just like before, doing the single invoice, produce our PDF. Option A is go through them one by one, produce a PDF, save it, attach it to an email, email the client. Option B is to go through each invoice one by one and select Notify Client. Maybe you custom type a bit of a message that they're going to be receiving when you hit Notify. It's going to include whatever PDF template you choose to show. Option C, which is the least time consuming, is from the batch, you're going to choose to Notify Selected. Hitting Notify Selected is going to individually email each client with the invoice PDF attached to that email. Don't worry, you're not going to get client A receiving client B's invoice, or client A receiving every single invoice you just generated. It's only going to email each individual client with their specific invoice for their specific job. Notice one of them isn't allowing me to do that, and the reason is that the contact on that invoice does not have an email address, and therefore it's impossible for the system to send them anything. So you can hit Notify Selected, and it's going to email all of those clients. So that's the process for doing a batch invoice for multiple jobs where we're doing time and materials. Emma, has any questions come up? Anything I can help with at all?
Hey, Mark. Yeah, I have one. It's going back to the work in progress report, so I hope that's okay. Janet was asking that she was seeing negative numbers on there and how you were seeing negative numbers on the work in progress report. Would that be something you might be able to address? If not now, just before we wrap up?
Yeah, let's see if I can touch on it really quickly here. One thing I want to mention is that summary view is really good as well. It's essentially the same report, but it gives you totals by client, which is really nice. So yeah, let me explain the negative numbers. So where we have a negative number, and you'll notice the top line is the first example of that. That negative amount is because we have invoiced more than the value of the work that we've done. So there's a few examples where you might see negative values. One is, the very first invoice we created in today's webinar was a project-based / fixed fee invoice for a job, and that total job we estimated to be $11,000. And in my scenario, we're going to invoice that client $11,000 no matter how much time and expenses well, maybe not expenses, but we're going to invoice them $11,000 no matter how much time it takes to complete the work. Now, if we just invoice them 50% up front, $5,500. So we have $5,500 in the invoice column, and in fact, I think we'll see it here. Here we are. Yeah, we'll see it here. So website landing page redesign, we just invoiced them 5,500, and you'll notice I should look right here. So invoice 5,500 of the estimated 11,000. Now, we actually haven't done any work yet. We haven't put any time, we haven't put any expenses. Therefore, the work in progress is a negative number because we've invoiced 5,500 more than the value of the work that we've done. Any clarification needed on that or any additional questions that I can help with, Emma?
I think we're okay for now. Janet, I apologize. I just sent you a response to a different question, so my apologies there. But I believe your question's been answered. Janet, feel free to just type to me again if that doesn't clear things up, and we can always get Mark to address that again before we wrap up today.
And also, one thing I want to mention too is that invoicing, of course, is oftentimes a complex topic with the different ways that agencies operate. And reporting on financials is also a complex topic as well. So if any questions are still lingering after the webinar, which I fully expect, please do feel to reach out to us, and we'll talk about different ways so that you can do that at the end of the webinar. One last thing I want to show really quickly while I'm here is just the summary version of that report, because it just totals everything by client, which is really nice. You'll notice it's essentially the same report. It's just giving organizing things by client, which a lot of people prefer. So just to recap a little bit, we just did a batch invoice for actual billing for open jobs. All the jobs that need to be invoiced for time and expenses within a certain time frame. In this case, it was a month. And we created that batch invoice, and we sent out each individual invoices by selecting Notify Client. The next thing I want to show is a project batch invoice. I'm going to pull up in a project here. Now, for the uninitiated, the project is an umbrella term for a group of jobs and or a group of estimates. Navigating to a project details page, we can see on that project details page that this project has, I believe, 4 jobs underneath it. So all 4 jobs. Now, these jobs happen to have work types of project-based billing. We intend to bill a certain percentage up front. And you'll notice up at the top right, it's giving us a bit of a summary. The total budget for this project is $40,000. We've broken that up into 4 jobs. Here are the 4 jobs. Here are the estimates for those jobs. And when they total up to $40,000. That's the budget for the project. We have put some work in this. We've only put in $3,800 worth of work. But in this scenario, it's a project. We have 4 jobs. We want to generate one invoice for 50% of the $40,000 and send it to the client as one invoice for 4 jobs. The way that we would do that is from the project details page. I'm going to select to add invoice, and it's going to ask me, do you want to create one invoice for multiple jobs? Defaulted to be selected in the case of a project because it usually makes sense that way. If you want to create 4 separate invoices, feel free to deselect that. Just like before, I'm going to say 50% of my estimated amount, so 20,000 of the 40,000 billing up front. Select create. And just like the other batch, it brings us to the batch add page. And then just like before, we're simply going to choose to add all and submit that. Now, one thing that I actually neglected to show off in the actual billing scenario, which I really should have, and I may go back to do that, is that when you add those jobs and you add those invoices, the little button here appears that it looks like a little pencil, and it's the option to edit the actual invoice. And if I click on this, what's going to happen is it's going to show me the structure of that job. In this case, let me move this window over a tiny bit. We're invoicing $7,500 of this job. There's an actual value of $2,705. If I want to see where is that actual value coming from, what work has been done on this, clicking on that little button there, the little pencil, is going to open up the scope of work structure for that job. I'm then going to see the service groups in the list of services, their estimated value, actual value, variance, how much you're invoicing right now, previously invoiced and remainder owing. Now, right now, we're invoicing 50% of estimated. So notice $500, 50% of that is $250. However, if I click on the arrow here, it's going to show me that we have a bunch of timesheets here, and all of those timesheets have hours and rates. So if we were billing to actual, we could go in and select and deselect those. And just to give you a quick example of that, I'm going to fudge this around just a little bit. Let's say we were billing to actual. Notice when I'm putting in 100%, I'm going to click on the actuals column. It's going to fill in with the value of my actuals. Now, if I were to go in and select these and say, well, you know, this timesheet on the 30th for 2 hours totaling $200, maybe based on the description, we can't invoice this. So I'm going to deselect it. We also can't invoice this $180 either. So I'm going to deselect that. So with the batch invoicing, you still have 100% control over every single line item that's being invoiced, even down to the timesheet. It's allowing you to do it in a quick and easy way, but keep in mind you do still have that control. I'm going to hit cancel to keep this as a 50% invoice. Hit submit next. Now, instead of what we saw earlier, because earlier we created a batch invoice for multiple jobs, but we told the system to create a single invoice for every single job. There was a bunch of different clients there. In this case, there's one client. It's my client called Marcia Auto Group. And we've created one invoice for them. So the page that we're looking at is a bit different. You know, instead of having a whole list of invoices, we have essentially one invoice. And we can then produce a PDF version of that. And based on how you customize the printout, it's going to show more or less information than this. You know, each job, description of the job, total $20,000 that we're invoicing. So we can then notify the client or save it as a PDF and attach it to the email, but it's one single invoice that we've created for the project. Figured I'd check in again. Emma, any questions on that process at all?
We haven't had any questions on that, Mark, but I'm really enjoying what you're showing. I think this is great and such a huge change over back in the day on those batch invoices.
Definitely. And, you know, one thing I maybe will show really quickly here, if I go back to invoice 69, and I know that I don't mean to go over a topic twice here, but I do want to mention that, you know, you are able to, when you're generating each of these individual invoices, you know, you are able to go ahead and select and deselect the individual timesheets and things like that. And that's a huge improvement, just like you said. I mean, it's a huge improvement over not being able to do that previously, where you kind of had to pick and choose what you're going to invoice beforehand. Now you can go through and you know, address things timesheet by timesheet. The next thing I'd like to show is the process for batch invoicing retainers. So the concept of the retainer being that there is a set amount that we're charging the client every single month. And I'm going to show you how we create the retainers. I'm also going to show you a bit of reporting on the retainer as well. So, you know, again, the concept of the retainer is we're billing the client a set amount every single month, and we're going to be providing certain type of services over the course of that month. And I mean, a classic retainer is typically, you know, the contract for it is structured in that, you know, if we go over by 20%, it doesn't matter. We're going to bill you the agreed upon amount. If we go under by 20%, it doesn't matter. We're going to bill you the agreed upon amount. Now I realize that that's not always, you know, exactly the case. I mean, that's the perfect scenario, but it's not always the case. You know, I hear agencies telling me all the time, you know, that, hey, we have a retainer with this client, but if we go over, then if we go under, we only bill them for the time we spent, and if we go over, then we take that off in the next month's retainer. And I mean, I got corrected recently at a Second Win seminar by Tony Mikes when I was explaining that. He said to me, "Well, Mark, that's not a retainer. That's a time and materials job with an agreed upon target." So I understand that a lot of agencies are facing scenarios like that right now, where their clients are saying, "We want to pay your retainer, but if you go under the retainer, we don't expect to pay the full amount." So, you know, I recommend checking out Second Wind. They have some good, you know, advice on kind of how to deal with that. But the process I'm going to show you today is the assumption of you're going to bill the exact amount of the retainer every single month, no matter if you go way over or you go way under. And I'm going to show you how to report on that. So what I'm going to do is, like a lot of the other times before, I'm going to do a job find. And I'm going to use my work type again. I'm going to say, show me all of my retainer jobs. Now, because retainer jobs are, you know, billed every single month, the status isn't really relevant either. All we need to do is just choose open. I want to see all of my open retainer jobs. Click find. and that produces the results. I have 4 open retainer jobs. Now notice that it shows as estimated, actual, variance, invoiced, and remainder. Now with the retainers, some of the numbers are going to be a little bit wonky because this estimated amount is never going to change. That is the amount that you're billing every single month. The actual amount is going to change in a lot of cases. If you're tracking time directly to the retainer job, this actual amount is going to grow. However, if you have a project-based retainer, you may be tracking time to a bunch of different jobs under that project, and that actual amount may actually not grow. It may stay as 0 because you're not putting your time directly to this job. This is the billing job that we're using to bill this amount every single month. Don't worry if it sounded a bit confusing. It's okay. What I'm trying to say here is this is the amount that you're billing every single month. This amount may or may not grow continually, but this amount, the invoice amount, will. It is going to grow, and it's going to grow because this is your billing job, and it's going to grow significantly larger than the value that you have estimated for the retainer. But you can still report on it, and I'm going to show you how. But we've pulled up a list of all of our jobs. We pulled up a list of all of our retainer jobs, and now we just want to invoice them for the value of the retainer. All we do is we hit batch invoice. I don't need to do anything other than give it a name, retainer, webinar, batch. And I don't need to do anything here. I'm billing 100% of estimated. Billing percentage defaults to be 100%. Null equals 100%. All we do is we just hit create. And that generates our batch invoice. And then just like before, we're going in, we're hitting add all. Generates invoices for all of those jobs. Notice the estimated amount, that's the value of the retainer that we're billing every single month. And then, that's a big one. And then the the invoice amount that we're actually billing. So I'm going to hit save or submit next. That's our invoices created. Just like before, because this was a batch for different companies, we have 4 different clients, or there might have been 3 different clients and 4 retainers. Therefore, we have a separate invoice for every single one. And just like before, we can choose to notify all, or we can notify them one by one by going through and clicking on each invoice and then choosing to either produce a PDF or hit notify. So, those are your options. Again, notify them all at the same time, notify them individually, or produce the PDF, save it to your desktop, attach it to an email the client. Now let's take a look at one of these, and I want to look at this one. I want to look at this SEO retainer for my client, Great Atlantic Insurance. Clicking on the name of the job is going to navigate us to the job's details page. I've noticed that there's a couple of questions that popped up. I just want to show something before I address that. On our jobs details page for our SEO retainer, you're going to notice that there's, of course, the financials tab. Now, what this is going to show you here is all of the value. And what we're seeing here is we're seeing our SEO services. We've estimated 5 hours every single month at $500. The actual value is 10 hours, and the actual value is all the work that we've ever put into this, not month by month, but for all time. At $1,000, we've gone over the retainer by $500. The invoice amount is also $1,000. However, this is for everything. As I mentioned, the invoice amount and the actual amounts are going to grow forever. The estimated amount will not. So the question I often get is, well, how am I supposed to look and see for the month of January, how do we do on this retainer? The way that you're going to do that is by using these filters. And I'm going to say from January 1st until January 31st, filter that by date. And what I'm seeing is that for the month of January, our $500 retainer, we put in 4 hours, we put in $400 worth of work. We invoiced the full retainer amount, so we were positive $100. We invoiced the full retainer amount, $500, which is $100 more than the value of the work that we've done. How do we do in February? Well, from February 1 until today, and notice I like the short forms, but of course you can also select from the calendar there. But from February 1 until today, I can see that our $500 retainer, we've put in 6 hours at $600. So for January, we were under 100 bucks. For February, we were over 100 bucks. But we only invoiced the retainer value, standard contract, 500 bucks. We invoiced for $500 less than the value of the work that's been done. Now, in a perfect scenario, after a year of this retainer, you're going to look and you're going to see, regardless of your filters, the invoiced amount equaling the actual amount. That would be perfect. Probably not going to be the case. You're probably going to be over on it. Maybe you'll be under. Most agencies will laugh at that idea, but maybe you'll be over, or maybe you'll be under. But using these date fields allows you to look on a month-by-month basis. What's the value of the retainer compared to the value of the work that's been done compared to what's invoiced? Emma, any questions that I can help with on that structure?
Oh, hey, Mark. I haven't had any particularly on that structure. I did just get a good question from Susan about printing up batches that I was just typing a response to. But I'll continue with that typed up. But Susan, yes, it does look that you can certainly print up a batch of invoices in one fell swoop. And we did just get a question. Oh, no, it's just a bit of feedback, so I'll respond to Bob shortly about that. But no, great stuff so far, Mark. Thanks for checking in.
Okay, no problem. So, that really covers the different workflow processes. Just to recap, we created a single invoice for project base. We did that by doing a job find. We did a job find for work type of project based, and how you decide what's to bill on each job is up to you. Maybe it's the project manager handing you a piece of paper with some notes on it. Maybe it's him producing a report and typing it out. Maybe it's an account executive who's just letting you know verbally, or perhaps you're using the ready to bill status. But we're doing a job find for project base, choosing which one we want to invoice, and because all the jobs you might be billing them differently, we would do them one at a time. You cannot do a batch. I guess you could do a batch, for all of your project base and go in and manually edit each one. I'd recommend just creating the invoices singularly one by one. The second process that we took a look at was doing a batch invoice by doing a job find for work type of actual billing for open, and then doing a batch invoice for all unbilled time and expenses, remainder from actuals. We then did a project batch where we looked at a project details page and added a batch invoice from that. We've also done our retainer structure where we did a job find for work type retainer. So, you'll notice the theme of using that work type to label the jobs as to how you intend to bill them. We find that to be really useful. If you prefer, instead of using work type in these terminologies, maybe use category. And instead of actual billing, you prefer time and materials. And instead of project base, you prefer fixed price. But it's labeling these jobs appropriately so that you're able to pull them up and quickly ascertain what needs to be invoiced for each one. Now let's say that we just got a payment. So we just got a payment for 2 invoices. We just received a payment for that first project-based invoice that we created. We also got a payment for our project invoice as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to a job here. Now I can't remember the invoice number, to be honest with you. But if the client pays the invoice, they're probably going to include the invoice number that they're paying. So you'd most likely do an invoice find for that invoice number. Because I can't remember it, I'm going to navigate to the job, and I'm going to look at my invoices. That's going to show me one invoice. I think it was $5,500. There's one invoice for $5,500. All I'm going to do is I'm going to select it. That's going to bring me into the details page. I'm then going to choose to edit details. And I'm going to put in a payment amount. I'm going to say they paid the full $5,500, and they paid it with let's say a check, and they paid it today, and we'll submit that. And that invoice is now marked as paid. When we go back to the jobs details page, we're going to be able to see on our invoice tab that is a paid invoice with a $0 balance. If you have a batch invoice, it really works the same way. I'm going to navigate to my project details page, go to my invoices. You'll notice it's listing out all the different jobs, but it's actually one invoice, B78. Select it, invoice B78. Again, all 4 jobs, but one invoice. So when I edit details here, I'm going to say that of that $20,000, they paid us $20,000, and they paid it with maybe credit, and they paid it today as well. and submit that. So the process for marking the invoices paid is really simple. You just pull them up, pull the invoice, hit edit details, mark the payment. Now let's take a look at a bit of profit loss reporting. I know we're going a bit over time here, and I'm going to try to run through this pretty quick. But if we go into our report section, I'm going to go under Analyze. A really useful report is going to be the profit analysis report. Now, I always recommend to everyone to really go through all the reports with a fine-tooth comb. Literally go to the report section, look at every single one. Go to the list view for every single module and look at every single report and export options that are there. I highly recommend doing that. And of course, our help site and support site has good information on that. But what I'd like to show you today is our profit analysis. This report has good filters. I'm going to produce this for one client. Of course, you can produce for all clients. I'm just going to produce it for one. I can put date ranges and statuses. I'm going to say, just show me all the open jobs. I only want to see open jobs. I don't want to see stuff that's closed. Hit submit. Now, one thing that I've been struggling with a little bit recently is a recent update to my Google Chrome is causing some of these XML reports to not open up automatically as I'm used to. So that's why I'm opening up in the Finder window and selecting Open With. But here we're seeing our profit analysis report, and the one I chose to produce is really simple, just for one client and just their open jobs. But again, it could be for all clients with totals of each client. It could be for any statuses, any date ranges that you wish. But what this is now showing us is for each job, and of course total at the client and a total at the bottom, there's multiple clients, we're seeing our actual cost to date. Anytime you see the word cost, it's reflecting your cost. The cost of billable and non-billable time. That's employee salary information. How much are you paying the employees? What is your cost for that time? We're then seeing the estimated billable of our time and expenses. What did the estimates say would be the billable value? Actual billable is being the billable value of our time and expenses. We're then seeing invoice to date. How much have we invoiced the client to date for each of these? We're then seeing invoice versus estimated. What's the total estimated value compared to what's been invoiced? There's $48,000 in estimation that we haven't yet billed for. We can then see invoice versus actuals. In some cases, it's zero. We've invoiced exactly the amount of work that we've done. In this case, we've actually invoiced more than the value of the work that we've done. If we were seeing a negative value here, it would mean that we have invoiced less than the value of the work that we've done. Potential profit loss. People are also asking me what this is. What is this calculating from? Potential profit loss is adding up the billable value of all work done on these jobs and making the assumption that you intend to bill for all of it. It's then using the cost values of all that work and comparing it to the billable values, making the assumption, again, that you intend to bill for everything. Not always realistic. And then the actual profit loss. Of course, that is comparing how much have you invoiced compared to the cost value of all the work that you've put in. It's a very useful report. Again, it can be a significantly larger report depending on the parameters that you put in, for narrowing it down to one client or job types or statuses or ranges and a variety of things like that. Now, what you may also want to look at is, what's the payment on our invoices looking like right now? If I do an invoice find for, if I want to see, what are my outstanding invoices? Who owes us money? Who hasn't paid us right now? I might do an invoice find, and I might say, show me all my invoices. Close down this box at the bottom here. Show me all my invoices that perhaps are outstanding. So outstanding, unpaid invoices. I might want to narrow it down by a date range. I can do that using the search tips here. So, for example, I might want to see all the invoices from January 1 until today. Again, I like the short forms. You can always put your cursor into the field and select from the calendar. But from January 1 until today, I want to see all the outstanding invoices. Click Submit, and I have 35 outstanding invoices. I can then sort this by any header. Maybe I'll sort it by company. I'm then going to produce a PDF. Now, of course, we could have limited that find to to one company. So if we wanted to limit that to a single company and send that off to them as a PDF report, then we could. But this is showing us then the company, the name of the job, the type of invoice, total balance or total of the invoice, the balance owing, and the date of the invoice. And it'll give us a total at the bottom. It happens to be breaking into the next page. In total, we have $243,000 worth of outstanding invoices. It's quite a bit, actually. So again, I mean, you might do an invoice find for just one client, and I know I just said that, but you could, narrow it down by company. I want to see for Great Atlantic. I want to see all of my outstanding invoices. And Great Atlantic Insurance has 7 outstanding invoices. Here they are. That's totaling $32,445. We can see the date of those. And you could have narrowed that down by a variety of things. I mean, you might want to look at it based on work type. Maybe you'll start to see some trends. If all of your retainer jobs are getting paid right away, but all of your time and materials are being left a lot longer before they're paid. We can also see this information at the company details page as well. If we navigate to a company's details page, we're going to see on that company's details page an invoices tab. And that's going to show us a list of all their invoices, if they're paid or outstanding, and what the balance is on those. So, the invoice find, very useful for this, and there's a variety of filters and information that you can tweak that by. But then, of course, looking at a company's details page, you'll see that information here as well. Have any questions that I can answer, any assistance I can provide at this time?
No, we've had some really good feedback today, though, so thanks everyone who has typed in little feedbacks or little things they'd like to see coming soon in the system. So thanks for all of that and for all the questions, of course, but haven't had any new questions for you yet, Mark.
Okay, no problem. Well, that covers everything that we have on our agenda today. I know that we're pretty much hitting the time that we have planned for it, so I'm glad that worked out. Emma, what's the process from here? Are we going to stay on and see if there are any questions that we can answer?
Yeah, that would be my game plan. What I'll probably do, if you're done presenting, was there anything else you wanted to show before I take away your presenter rights?
No, that covers everything for me.
Okay, well, don't hang up on me because last week we had a little bit of a goof up there. So I'm just going to change presenter to myself just because I've got a couple of screens I just want to show before I let everybody go here. So let's just do that. And hopefully I'm showing the correct screen just with a big question mark there and not my email screen. I'm taking that as a
Yep,
yes.
that's got the question mark there.
Whew, okay, that's good. Excellent. So if there are questions, please, everyone, do feel encouraged to type them in. I think what we'll do is probably leave the session open for about another 7 to 10 minutes, sort of to the top of the hour and just a little bit beyond. Just want to let everybody know to please consider, checking out our help section, our community forum when you're logged into Function Point. When you hover over help, you will see ways in which you can not only contact support, but participate in the forum and read, of course, all our training materials and webinar recordings. This session will be posted either later today, more likely tomorrow. We do have to just convert the format and then get it up on our YouTube channel. And then last but not least, next week, same time next week, Jeremy's going to be leading a session all about expenses. So with a bit of a cheeky title there of Can I Write Off a Martini Lunch? Wouldn't that be nice? So Jeremy will be taking all of us through that same time next week. But yeah, we'll probably stop talking now, Mark, and then we'll just leave the session open, the question area open. So everyone feel free to type your questions in and either Mark or I will answer. And as Mark had said a couple of times, if you think of something later today, just feel free to either reach out to either of us, reach out to our support team. We're happy to help you if you get stuck or have any further questions. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Mark. That was really, really excellent.
No problem, and thank you everyone for your time today, and I hope that this is beneficial. And again, if anybody does have any questions, feel free to enter them now, or you can reach out to myself. My email is marc@functionpoint.com, and it's marc@functionpoint.com, or contact your trainer or support team as well.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye now.